So we're here at the Nerdy Book Club to discuss one of my favorite books 20 years ago, and might not be my favorite book now. The book in question is Promethea, Volume 3, covering issues 13 to 18, where the hero Sophie, otherwise known as Promethea, ventures into the afterworld to help a friend.
Is that where she is?
Okay.
Give us a score, Chad.
Oh, okay. I'll start with a score. The artwork, I'll give a very harsh 8. The story, I will give a very harsh 4.
Ooh. Hot takes.
Pick someone to go next.
You, big guy.
Me?
Yep.
I will give it a combined score of 6.5, and I will say that J.H. Williams has contributed the majority of that score. And then I'm going to go to Carlos.
I am going to give the exact same score as Chad, as an 8 for art. And because the art and the page design is gorgeous and sort of contributes a lot to what is being said, the problem is what is being said is sort of like reading a textbook. So I don't know. I don't want to read a textbook in my spare time, so I'm going to give it a 4. I am going to go to Jolie.
I give this book the same score as Carlos and Chad. Well,
I'm winning.
I'm going to give the art a 9, actually. Forget it. So 9 for the art, 4 for the story. I, like Carlos, I like reading textbooks, but I like to pick the textbooks that I read. So, yeah, I would like to pick... I'd like to pick Oliver's Pizza.
Okay. The pizza didn't read the book because it's a layabout. It also won't get a job.
I like the tribute to Detroit comics and Hungry Howie's, though. So.
Thank you. I know, right? Right? Picking it old school over here. Now we just need the folding tables and everything will be complete. But Oliver, so I'm sorry, I missed. What was the score that Chad and Julie Carlos gave it?
Terrible.
Terrible. I'm gonna give it. I'm kind of between like a 6 and a 7, so I guess that'd be like a 6.5 maybe. Or maybe no, I'll go to a 7. I enjoyed the like visual imaginativeness of it. I think it's very like visually beautiful. I like the fantastical landscapes. I read it digitally, which I regretted almost immediately because it became very apparent that is not at all the optimal way to read this book. But I still enjoyed it nevertheless. It does feel a little essay-ish. I enjoyed it. Why don't we go to what did you guys think?
Wow.
Maybe we won't go to Lucy. Let's go to Mike L.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm having problems with my mic. I give it an 8 for story and an 8 for art. I love textbooks. So, I mean, I guess if you judge this as a story, it's not really much of a story, or it is a story, but it's filled with so much other things. But I love reading what I'm reading, so I can't really complain about it. One thing I don't think anyone's mentioned is the experimentation with the page design. And by the way, I did read 1 to 18 to prepare for this, so I might be remembering things from earlier issues. But the scene where they walk on the
credit.
What's that?
You did extra credit.
Oh yeah, thank you. But when they walk on the Mobius strip, my mind was blown. And then there's a few other scenes like that when there's kind of like you can read the comic in a circle or a reverse circle, and it can still connect together. The Mobius strip is the same way. You can read it in several different directions and it still makes sense. So for that alone, oh my God, for experimentation, a 10. But I do agree that if you're judging it strictly as a story, I can understand people giving it a 4. But as just a thing to read, I really, really like this comic. However, I do think Tom Strong from ABC Comics is better. So yeah. Mike Fritsch, have you gone yet?
Not yet.
Okay, Mike Prime, I pick you.
All right, thank you. The story and the book did not work for me on many levels. I would have to give it probably a 5 altogether. It was very beautiful, but it was a beautiful train wreck to me. So I got plenty more to say about that, but I really struggled with the book. So, and I will pick Lee. Is Lee still there?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry about that. My computer conked out on me, so I had to switch to my phone. I couldn't hear anybody. I could see you all, but I couldn't hear anything. So, are we doing
we're doing round robin. You give a score and then a little short synopsis of your take.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it an 8 as an introduction to Kabbalah and Western mysticism. I thought it was a great primer, and I like the way that it unpacked the layers for people who are uninitiated into those mysticisms.
And then we usually then select somebody who would go next. So
I'm going to pick Chad.
I'll pick Eric. Yeah, Chad went already. Story-wise, I'd say probably like a 3, because maybe if in just the section that we had to read, you probably need to read before it and maybe after it, because then there wasn't really anything that had anything to do with anything. It was just like random episode of nothing.
Take your drink.
So yeah, and some of the artwork was 7 or 8, and the rest was like 2. Come on. But some pages, there was a few pages that were like beautiful, but then yeah, the rest was just somebody's kid drew it. So.
Wow.
All right, Eric, pick someone else.
There's a Sean that just popped up in the middle. I don't know who that is.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Who is Sean?
Well, my thing doesn't change color, so I give the art a 9. I really thought it was imaginative. But I give the story a 2. It really felt like a magic school bus deep dive into mystical bullshit that doesn't really matter. So that he was making up or something. I don't know.
None of it's made up. But anyway, we'll talk about that later.
Philosophy's made up.
God. My head's going to explode. I mean, everything's made up in a way.
Well, not made up by him, though. Not made up by him.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, I know. But I mean, in a philosophical way.
What is real?
What is real?
Keith and Luce, are you guys riding in a truck right now? Sounds like you're on the highway.
Do you want to? Oh boy. Do you want to give your score now, or do you want to wait until you get to your destination? The friend squad is looking very lonesome. Well, he has a pizza though, so he's
a pizza there.
Yeah.
Oh, I need to keep me company.
Mm-hmm.
Pizza's warm.
Okay, 1 second.
What? Are you gonna give the score?
I didn't finish it because I'm the worst. I like the pizza. I was reading.
What?
I know I'm awful. I read like 10 issues though, and it was really good because I was gonna be like, I'm gonna start from the beginning so I know everything that's going on. But I'm really, really impressed with the art, and I don't know what goes on in the story that everybody's like, it's awful. Because I was really happy because I was like, it is like the magic school bus of magic. I love this. Like, all I do since COVID started is read crazy magic stuff because the world doesn't make sense anyway. So why not just get into weird occult shit?
I love it.
I was really happy with the comic thus far. And I don't know if something just takes a weird turn or if you guys are like, fuck magic. Magic's for nerds.
I didn't know you were going to go on a magic ran
Because this is a very magical book.
because we just showed up. So I got to hang up.
Okay, well,
Okay,
Keith will
all
give
right.
his hot take. Keith is going to hang up and.
All right, Keith has hanged up.
Gotta
Okay,
hang up
to be continued.
Okay, so I'll just keep talking. So the reason I picked this book is because I really, 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 really liked it when I was 22. I read it from the beginning.
Were you 22 last week? 'Cause
Shut
you
up.
said you really, really liked it last
I still really like it. I liked it for what it was to me then.
week. Give it a 4.
Shut the hell up. I opened it up and I looked through the pages and I was reading what I was reading and I was like, oh, this doesn't really work for me anymore. And I thought it would be interesting to hear people's takes from a variety of perspectives. Because when I was 22, I was into magical shit and I wanted to know philosophy kind of stuff. And now I'm like, I don't need to know that. Those things are filled in for me. So now I was looking for like a story. And having spoken with Eric about the fact that he didn't know that Sophie was the main character, kind of made it interesting.
Well, can I quote?
About the fat chick.
What? Oh, Barb.
Yeah, I forgot her name. Barb.
Yeah.
Sorry. Like the whole thing was about Barb, but it's a Promethea book, so it had nothing to do with the main character.
Barb
could be
too.
Right. It's like a Slayer thing. It's like a Slayer thing. They're like Slayers.
Yeah.
For a second, I thought you meant the band, and then I realized you were talking about
Why not? Because it doesn't have to be like it doesn't have to be Promethea. You could slot in Michelle for that character, and it would still be the same.
Yeah.
It could be a random named Michelle.
I assumed that the whole series was about the Sophie Promethea specifically.
She is the main character, but and this is the thing is that I've read this before. I completely forgot a different Promethea comes in right away, which is the green-haired Promethea, and she takes over. Well, this Promethea goes on this adventure. I completely forgot about that part, but yeah,
adventure seems generous. But
Yeah,
okay.
she only did like 2 things.
I'm sorry. I
learned a lot.
Okay, like I just have one hot take, and then y'all can run with my hot take. My hot take number 1 is saying J.H. Williams is amazing seems just kind of like yes, he is, right? So like okay, and then we seem to keep giving Alan Moore a way out of whatever it is. Like we can say it. It's disappointing.
That's like, we're going to nail this old buck to the wall.
No, but I mean, why can't we just, well, he is good, but sometimes good people not so good.
This isn't Lost Girls. You need to calm down.
Anyway, those are my hot takes.
Over Lost Girls all day long.
Well, the other reason that I picked this book is because of its artistic inventiveness. I knew that it was beautiful. I knew that it was experimental. And I figured we do a lot of talking about story. We do a lot of talking about character. This was a book where we could talk about the art and the design of comics and kind of have a discussion about that, whether or not it helped the story or hindered it.
Well, it's too bad Jeff's not here because for starters, one of the things we kind of touch on usually is something comic books can do that a movie or a book can, and certainly that scene where they're walking in the Mobius strip, there's no way you could do that in a film unless you held on one shot for like 15 minutes or 10 minutes of characters just walking around in a circle, right? I mean, that you couldn't do that in a novel, certainly. So I think that's an example of something you can really only do in a comic book, right? And oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, but even if you did do it in a film, it wouldn't be the same because part of it is like you choose the direction.
Right. Good point. Yep. You're right. You get to pick which order you read it in, how they join together. Right. And like they're hearing themselves say certain words, and then blah blah blah, and then it flips when you get to that other part of the Mobius strip. So there's times that happen.
Does Lee have his hand up?
Yes, I do.
Don't know. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Lee.
Well, I thought something else as looking at the way that the artwork portrays different time periods with the way the artwork is drawn. So as you travel through time, the artwork changes to match that time period that they're discussing in. And the other part that I thought was fascinating is that the way they're portraying different levels of reality. Like you have the main reality, then you have the reality that if you take mushrooms, and then you have the reality layer that if you are, initiated into these mystic traditions and you understand these things inherently, and the way those different layers are piled on each other as a storytelling mechanism, I don't think you could do that in a movie.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Maybe you do it as like a series. Like if each episode in a series is like filmed in a different way, differently, or colored, or but you'd still miss out on a lot of the.
I was going to go back to WandaVision.
That's a great example. Like WandaVision has a different set of tropes for each issue or each episode, and you could do something similar with this, but then you have to talk about the story and whether it's filmable.
Well, even there's the one issue that's completely radically different, and that's the one where they reference Yellow Submarine. Remember the one that's drawn with those big, thick, like psychedelic?
Yeah, the Peter Max issue.
Okay, yeah. And
Water
it's
one?
like, yes. And it's like, you maybe if it was like a movie for that, or if it was a TV series, that episode would be all almost animated, or I don't know how they would do it. They could try to do it, but I don't think it'd be quite as effective, So
the only thing I can think of would be rotoscoping, where you would draw over live actors. That's the only thing I could think of.
Right.
I mean, I think for comics, it's best to not think in terms of how things are depicted, because in general, you can do it in animation, but film creates relationships through time with different images, and comics does it through space. And I feel like this book doesn't really hit you over the head, but is willing to experiment with it. I mean, it does hit you over the head, but the page looks completely different. Is willing to experiment with it. Promethea, the series, is willing to experiment with it in ways that most comics are just not. It's I don't. A few my last suggestion was Breakdowns by Art Spiegelman, and he has one piece where you just follow the arrows and it doesn't really matter. It's sort of bringing back sort of the underground comics experimentation with space in a way that most comics just want to flow for the sake of flowing, keep the action, make those things in the background. This comic really brings the spatial relations to the foreground. On every page, we can talk about it with every page.
It really establishes scale as well. It does that very well.
Well, can I take this time to read the quote that I posted in the discussion? Did you guys see that? The quote from Trina Robbins. Did you guys see this? Maybe not. Okay, I'll read it quickly. So Trina Robbins is an artist. She's been around forever. She drew one Wonder Woman series called, I can't remember what it's called, Legends or something. Anyway, her quote is, "Promethea is what Wonder Woman should be if she hadn't been destroyed by generations of idiots." Are there any Wonder Woman fans in the discussion?
Wonder Woman.
So do you agree or disagree with that comment?
But Wonder Woman's not a mystic character.
Yeah.
And Wonder Woman is not an Alan Moore delivery vehicle.
Well, but Wonder Woman is a demigod, so she is mystical, isn't she?
But how is that important to this quote unquote story?
Well, the question is this a better version of Wonder Woman than DC has done for the past 70 years? I think so.
This isn't trying to be a superhero comic. I mean,
only the first issue she was trying to be a superhero. Mm-hmm. After that, none of it.
Well, I guess the question is superhero comics have gone in not one direction, but a specific direction over the past X number of years. And is this, and I'm going to...
Is that direction?
Well, let's call it the, does Batman eat women out direction? Because that's the way...
How is that the direction? That's an internet hot take.
No, that's the way, we've seen Batman's dick in another Batman comic. So the direction superhero comics have gone is ultra realism. Elongated man's wife getting raped, things like that. Speedy getting his arms amputated, things like that. So ultra realism, violence, stuff like that. So the question is this a different direction superheroes could or should take? Is this a better way to go? I'm guessing by the discussion, no, but I certainly think it does, or it is.
But there's violence in this story too.
Sure, there's definitely violence, but there's not. It's a different. Violence itself is not the problem. It's the kind of violence that's used in superhero comics.
My ankle on a wood.
What's that?
John Byrne made an attempt at one of his Wonder Woman comic books where he did the Mobius strip of them walking when she was counseling with the gods. So
did he?
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. I didn't know that.
It was on his run of Wonder Woman. And he did a similar thing where he tried to say, well, when Wonder Woman goes to Mount Olympus, it's this other plane. It's this higher level. But his art style didn't really transfer as well as Williams' art style does. But he did make an attempt at doing that on his one run of Wonder Woman.
Actually, well, here's one. The most famous Wonder Woman story that I can think of in the past 20 years is where Wonder Woman breaks Maxwell Lord's neck. Everyone talks about that. To me, I don't care about that. But what was cool was in '87 when George Perez did Wonder Woman and he showed Olympus with all the gods. It was almost like an MC Escher thing where they were all, Olympus had no
level plane. Yeah,
people
John
were.
Byrne did that first, though.
Okay, no, George Perez did it in '87. He did it before John Byrne.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but anyway, so the gods would be one god would be, up this way, the other guy would be upside down, and so just little things like that I think are really cool. Just incorporating that stuff.
Yeah, because you're trying to interpret a otherworldly plane of existence where gods would live at that's separate and distinct from our baseline reality, right? It's like somebody trying to describe an acid trip to somebody who's never been on acid or on mushrooms.
Right.
You're trying to do that in a visual format. That's the way I would interpret it.
Jolie? Oh, I thought you had your hand up, Jolie. Oh, you're muted.
I did. No, I just, I think that we're getting kind of caught up in sort of like a quicksand discussion point here.
Okay, well, we can move on. That was my only quote. So someone else, I don't know if. If I have something to say about it, I guess, but I don't want to dwell here. Is that, in my opinion, to kind of draw from, I don't know, history, or to kind of the story. I get it. The stories that you're talking about, they are interesting, but again, they're very textbook-like, and they're not very exciting. But they're very, they give you a good amount of meat to chew on, but they're not. I don't know. They just don't. To me, they don't really seem to drive anything forward other than knowledge and learning, and that's it. This book it's all knowledge, it's all learning, and it doesn't seem like they're once they found Barbara, they're just talking about everything that ever existed ever.
I mean, it's a soapbox, I suppose.
Well, for another 6 episodes.
And if I knew it was going, well, I'm not sure if it would have made it better, but perhaps it would have blunted the impact if I knew it was going to be a soapbox.
I think for this book to be effective on a story, or not even a story, because on a prose level, you have to care about Western mysticism.
Western mysticism through an Alan Moore perspective.
Yeah, you have to care about Alan Moore's opinion on Western mysticism.
Yes.
And yes, I struggle to do that. With that being said, like flipping through the pages of an individual issue is like wonderful. Like if you take these as just like almost like paintings, because it's one of the few comics where a page or even a 2-page spread has to work together as a complete unit, right? And has to relate to the theme of what they are talking about. And that feels worthwhile. Like that, it feels like other artists should read this and maybe like take note. There's parts of it where it's kind of kitschy. Like I don't like one of them, like when they're on the chessboard, that's also like the mystical chessboard, and it takes the form of a chessboard. It's sort of like, ooh,
art direction. What's up?
What we did there. But I think the Mobius strip is effective because it sort of like plays into this feeling of like both like what they are talking about and also of like being stuck. Like it's supposed to feel like they're stuck. And even they talk about it afterwards.
I mean, I was wowed by that. Who wouldn't be wowed by the Mobius strip page? I mean, yes, it should be in a museum, no doubt. Maybe I just feel spoiled and jaded, but it's like I expect this level of art from J.H. Williams now that like, yeah, it I don't know. Like the story and the art, I think has to be good or bad together. Like I agree with Carlos, like these pages are amazing. Unfortunately, I have to struggle through the word bubbles in them. And there's a lot.
Was the Mobius strip being stuck or was it just being a cycle? I interpreted it as just it being
cyclical. Yeah.
Yes.
They were stuck though. Remember Promethea had to rip the other one out of it. So they don't know how long they were in the strip.
It's both. Like, yeah, but even like of being cyclical, like it captures it. I'm looking at it right now. Like it captures it like being cyclical, like also reflections, like, you know, sort of it gets into like the duality that they're talking about like throughout this. Because like it's got the sun and the moon. It's gorgeous. It like plays into the theme of like, so it plays into themes of the entire book like really well.
So one thing so I don't feel like this book is I don't really think of it as a textbook. I don't think it's purely didactic. I feel like it is kind of, the way I view it is the story is in a similar tradition as things like Alice in Wonderland or Alice Through the Looking Glass or Dante's Inferno or even The Magic School Bus, where it's sort of more about being on this road trip through these sort of fantastical otherworldly locations. And it's not really about the plot. Like Alice in Wonderland doesn't really have much of a plot. It's, you know, they kind of travel through these different locales and they interact with them to varying degrees. I don't know, I see it in like a very similar vein to those types of stories.
Mm-hmm.
Travelogue.
Yes, a fantastical travelogue.
Also, I want to quote Wikipedia. The series has been both criticized for acting as a mouthpiece for Moore's philosophical views and praised for the beauty of its artwork and innovation regarding the medium itself. Regarding the first claim, the series is, by Moore's own admission, didactic. Mm-hmm. When he says, there are 1,000 comic books on the shelves that don't contain a philosophy lecture and one that does. Isn't there room for that one?
Okay, funny. Well, one, I question that count, but whatever. And maybe,
at the time.
But this was not it. Mm.
Well, how many other books was doing this at the time that he wrote this?
Yeah, I mean, like this is just basically a poem and praise to just creativity. It's like it's kind of hard to do that, you know, without sounding all stuffy and whatnot. So yeah.
Yeah, like it doesn't really work today because there are like 10 plus other books on the shelf that are doing it. But back then, in the 90s, Judd?
The early 2000s. So like this was coming out around the same time as like all the best image stuff. I was reading this simultaneously with New X-Men, Invisibles, Filth. I mean, I was taking in a lot of information back then. So I didn't really, I was a different Chad. I wasn't looking for story. I was looking for information and I soaked it up.
Oh, so you're a robot. Okay. Was Sandman around the same time? Sandman is almost...
I think earlier than this.
Yeah. Sandman's late 80s. I think the first issues of Sandman come out.
Yeah.
We can check. We don't have to be curious about anything.
And to be fair, I think like this would work today for like apologies to younger Chad, but perhaps like an undergrad, like budding into whatever it is they butt into, you know, like if they just took philosophy 101 and then they pick this up, they'll be like, oh my God, see, all that stuff is in here too. Look how smart I am. I am salty tonight, you guys. I am so sorry. But I think it would still work today for like a certain kind of readership.
Don't worry. We all hate first year philosophy majors.
Thank you. I was that person. I hated myself. So yeah.
I mean, like now that I don't have to read Alan Moore's philosophy, like I almost realize like I'm just sort of flipping through the pages now and they're like the art is so dense and like also engaging, like when they're in the, what is it called? The world of shells, right? Like the sort of negative world, like the hell equivalent.
The red one?
Yeah.
In Mars?
That one's difficult to read. Like it hurts your eyes. And that was one of my questions that I put on. Like, what was your experience reading that issue specifically? Because it was so painful.
And it was meant to be, right? Because they're sort of conveying that. Yeah.
I don't know. I liked it. I didn't find it painful. But I don't like even so I'm looking at the page where like the spider introduces himself. Like Asmodeus introduces himself, and there's like this one side that's like a column of souls, and there's this other side that it's like this web of spiders, and you have both Barbara and Sophie talking to each other amongst that, and then you flip to the next page and it's an inversion of like the sword tree that they had looked at an issue before, like all of this stuff, and like in a similar place in the page, like all of this stuff like deals with space in like really fascinating ways that connect to what is going on in the lecture.
Yeah.
I mean,
You called it a lecture.
He did call it a lecture.
You called it a lecture.
Like, I did call it a lecture. I mean, like, what is this? Like, feels less like Alice in Wonderland to me, because Alice in Wonderland, like, Lewis Carroll, like, took pains to make all of those interactions, like, interesting and sort of funny unto themselves, right? And like Alice is sort of this Alice is like the straight man to like all the ridiculousness going around her. This feels like very Phantom Tollbooth. This is like a grown-up mystic version of Phantom Tollbooth.
Oh yeah. I see that.
Or like, I mean, if you go older, like Pilgrim's Progress, like this like massive metaphorical journey that is supposed to be like instructive.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it instructing us to do? I mean, let's get to the meat of it. What is Alan Moore's philosophy? What should we be doing with our lives?
Finding your dead husband while you're dead also.
And then cheating on your
done.
I mean, like, there's a strong anti-consumerist. It's like, oh, you know, we're just buying, you know, that, you know, I didn't get to these issues, but like in the earlier ones, there's all the stuff about the weeping gorilla, and all this, you know, stupid music, and But it was like, like there's that, there's like this anti-consumerism, and then just like, how great is creativity? Creativity is awesome. We should all love creativity.
I think there's also a lot of it about, yes. And I think sort of the anti-consumerism is both like linked to creativity, but also like confronting yourself. Like the consumerism is a way to avoid like confronting like both like the beautiful thing, like it distracts from the beautiful things in life, but also from like confronting the negative things inside of you.
Wasn't that the same premise for Martha Washington Goes to War, where the fast food corporations were all fighting each other in these corporate wars? Wasn't that the same kind of treatise on consumerism, his take on it? Are you familiar with that?
I don't remember. I read that years ago. I don't remember, though.
Yeah, he had that was the same premise that he put forward in that, is that in the future, wars wouldn't be fought by governments, they would be fought by corporations.
Like in Demolition Man.
Yeah.
Good movie.
Taco Bell is the only one to survive the franchise wars.
Taco Bell.
I just wanted to throw that in there.
But yeah, I don't know how it is in these issues, but it was weird how like homophobic the first few issues were. Like she's always making fun of her friend, calling each other lesbians. Like,
do lesbians actually call each other lesbos or women?
The comic is not, like, Alan Moore's not homophobic. The character is, though.
Yeah.
Let's make that distinction.
Yeah,
like she's meant to be a shitty friend.
I guess that's fair, but it was still like odd about like how casually they drop like, oh, you're just a big old lesbo. Wow.
That was oh, go ahead, Jolie. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I just want to clarify.
Yeah.
That what the character said was homophobic, because she's like, well, I'm afraid to do this because then I'll just get called a lesbo, and then she did it anyway, and she's like, I guess I'm a big old lesbo. I was like, I get it. Alan Moore isn't homophobic, but is that necessary?
Yeah.
I think it just was highlighting like, I don't know, because there are relationships with women that are not good, and women will have friends that are really shitty and rude and homophobic and crappy. And I think that was kind of the point. Like, she's the kind of woman in her day-to-day life who is not real girl powery and doesn't have friends that empower her. And like, I have very complicated feelings about her friendship and her crappy friends. That's all I have. So
yeah, I guess for me it just came off as though because for me, when I read the words of a character, I feel as though I'm reading the words of the author. So it kind of took me back a little, and I was like, oh, is this how Alan Moore thought in the early 2000s? That's weird.
No,
obviously not. And that's the thing. I was like extremely surprised when I read that, because I just interpreted this as, this is how he feels, because that's usually what you do.
I don't personally ever.
Or even if like it's hard to sort of put it into context, like if there's like any sort of overarching story or plot purpose to it, because whatever's happening in that level of the story gets derailed by this portion. And I'm planning to read the third one because I am a sadist and a completionist. So maybe it comes back later. I don't know.
You'll be doing your own journey through hell, Pat.
Indeed. And I'm a firm believer of I need to read it first before I get to bitch about it. So
you're doing pretty good so far.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
That never stopped you.
Okay, so with regard to Stacia or Stacia or whatever we want to call her, the first couple of issues are pretty Stacia? Yeah. The first couple of issues are pretty they use homophobic language, I think, pretty extensively because as you can tell from this volume of the book, she does confront those dark parts of herself, as Carlos mentions, and kind of enjoys becoming a lesbian with her experience with Grace. So that kind of language does leave the book as Stacia becomes more comfortable with herself. I think it was intentional, but everybody's read is valid.
That's really interesting.
There was also the Fantastic Five background story, which at times was more interesting than the main story.
Yes.
But
And
there was
it's the schizophrenic mayor. Like, what's up with that? I want to know. Like, that was that, which maybe like goes to Moore's point about how I'm just super ensconced in the material realm and can never like upgrade to this level or whatever. That I find that stuff more fascinating.
Yeah, I'm the problem. I'm the one who like.
Yes.
Yeah. But there was like one of the superheroes like was like just like had his gender flipped by a villain, and then they just treat it like really weird. But it's always talked about in the background. So it was.
So
it was just all weird stuff.
I didn't read the other comics. I did read some of the like plot synopsis on Wikipedia, and there's like a lot of like gender sexuality stuff that happens in this comic, apparently. Like apparently one of the Prometheas is a gay man who becomes a woman.
No, I don't think he was gay.
I think he would be trans now. But I think at the time the book was written, I think that was how it was understood, that he was gay and preferred to think of himself as a woman. So that's how he was written in 2000. But I think now we've learned so much. I don't know enough about this. But yeah, I think nowadays we would call him trans. Bill or Bob or whatever.
I think it was Bill.
Barb. No, not Barb. The guy, the one from the 60s.
Yeah, it was Bill.
I thought that was great.
Bill. Yeah.
That wasn't in my issue. I don't know.
So I guess one question I do have for the people who like didn't like the story in the book, or I don't know, didn't like the information communicated, whatever you want to call it, if you don't want to call it a story. I guess like what were you hoping this book would be? Like, what did you want it to be?
Can I go?
Yeah.
All right. So I didn't know anything about the book before I got into it. I picked it up. It looked like a superhero book. I expected the superhero genre with all the tropes and expectations that come with that. And then over the course of a few issues, it's like, I'm having a hard time following this. And all of my expectations as a reader, because I was set up to expect a superhero book with the artwork and the initial storyline, I just like had to rejigger my whole perception of what was going on. And then it was slowly becoming clear to me over the issues that, oh, this is kind of like a tour of some mystical realm. So for me, I struggled with the book as a reader, trying to understand what the basic message was. And if I go back to it, and if I read some extraneous materials I find on the internet, I begin to understand more and more about what the author is trying to say. But I don't know. I guess I don't expect a book to be so obscure to me as a reader. I consider myself like pretty sharp and being able to pick up things, but this one was like a slog to work through. The artwork was glorious, and if it wasn't for the artwork, I wouldn't have read 18 issues if it wasn't for that artwork. But the artwork was astounding. But I just really struggled with understanding what the message of the book was. And still today, I couldn't explain to you the world of tarot cards and that whole philosophy or way of looking at the world. I can't explain to you anything that happened in this book short of a few really concrete things. So that's my take on it. I'm sorry. I know other people really love it, and I understand what it is that you're saying, and I could see how you're looking at it that way. But for me, that wasn't my experience.
Like, I guess I didn't, well, I expected great art because it's J.H. Williams the third, and that expectation was fulfilled. But beyond that, I guess I didn't really have any preconceptions, but like I'm not opposed to big, great ideas in my comics, but it really feels like being force fed, like being like, here's some Alan Moore ideas that I'm gonna like force feed into your mouth.
Oh, it was absolutely Alan Moore teaches occult 101.
Yes. Yes. And if I wanted to, I would have signed up. And I didn't sign up. So obviously I didn't want to.
Signing up for his master class.
No, thank you.
Teacher right now.
No, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I think maybe if it like, was like an actual poem or something like that. I mean, like it's just like an homage to how great creativity is, but I think at times it gets like a little too, if you're gonna do that, just go to the wall with, nerding out. But I think like every now and then there'll be like these stories that like try and ground it, and it's like the whole just go through the looking glass entirely. Don't look back. I mean, like looking through the looking glass, Phantom Toll Booth. They're not always checking in on the real world. I think he should have
just gone. But that was part of the mythos of it. Like, if you're gonna go into occult shit, you always gotta like ground yourself and be able to go into both worlds.
I don't think that this benefited from that. I think like it should have just been.
It was a choice though.
Yourself.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, like sometimes it's like there so that they can like go through different time periods and talk about other Prometheas. But I was like, I think you could have done that without having, I feel like Promethea's connection to the real world is,
tenuous.
Yeah, it was like, but all this is just like, a tribute to creativity, and I feel like if you're gonna do that, just go full snob, go full artsy, and just I feel like trying to like make it accessible didn't help it. I don't think it went over well, and didn't. I think it slowed it down, and just make it like have no. You could have it. I feel like it would accomplish. Like, I mean, it's his lecture. He could have it do anything. He didn't need to like have it constrained by a narrative, which I don't think he could have just like gone beyond that. And I mean, like I've read. We compared it to some other things. Think of like Edmund Spencer's The Fairy Queen. That one does have a narrative, but it also has like these sections where it's just like a poem talking about just whatever he wanted to think about. Because like there's a lot of authors they would bury their philosophy in other stories, and that's how they expressed it, how they got it out.
It's a common occult tradition as well. I think that's interesting why you kept bringing up poetry, because that's the common way to go about spreading occult information is through these awful fucking Aleister Crowley poems.
I'm trying to find one section. Like I get what everybody's saying, and I really feel like I'm what Mike Prime said about reading the book. His experience is really resonating with me, because I picked up the book, to answer Laura's question, I picked up the book expecting it to be like the 80s Wonder Woman, where Alan Moore uses mythology. I didn't expect him to use all of the mythology in existence, plus his own philosophy about it, to write this book. And I was like, wow, this is the third volume? What are 1 and 2 like? I started reading 1, like Lucy, and I was like, no, just it's going to take forever. Just skip to 3. I heard that you're able to read the different volumes without reading 1 to 3. But now that I've started reading 1 and now I've started reading 3, it's becoming very evident that this is It's an Alan Moore masterclass in the occult.
Yes, it really, and that's what I was expecting. So maybe that's why I have a different view of it. It was like, I know what's going to happen. And all you guys were like, it's a magic book. Like, no, it's like, whatever, superhero book with a little bit of magic.
Alan Moore.
It's a magic book with a little bit of superhero.
Alan Moore, the writer famous for writing straightforward superhero books.
So everyone is calling it, so I keep calling it philosophy, but some other people are calling it occult. So I guess I'm like, what's the difference between the two? And should I be calling it philosophy? Is that a misnomer that I'm doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I first read Promethea, and I just reread this book, so I'm like, I only have like vague ideas about the first and the second volume. Like I feel like if you are interested in the subject, like it resonates. Like it might have just been like one issue, I forget, but the one where she's meeting the different Prometheas and talking about like how characters change, or like how people depict how characters change, and sort of like the resonance, but also like how that depiction works. Like there's one early on that talked about like men writing women, which like has another meta level, right? Because it's Alan Moore writing this book about female characters. Like that was fascinating too. So like, it's like what Alan Moore thinks about stuff, I feel like. And like he spends a lot of time thinking about the occult because like he's a wizard that worships the snake god. So
so that other people drew comparison to other works, but the one that I drew was Fables. Because I was reading this, I was like, oh, okay, he's doing this like metafiction thing where he takes like things in the world and like twists it into, I don't want to call it a narrative, but like a story. But I think what made Fables better for me is like there's characters and it's a story, like, whereas this sort of feels more of a, here's J.H. Williams providing awesome green screen in the background while Alan Moore talks to you.
Well, the other thing that it really reminds me of is The Invisibles, which is his like magical comic book foible in a way. And I thought it was kind of interesting to think about them. Like, I don't know, and just how like I like so much their feud they have, just like the fact these adult men are arguing about comics and magic is just so much fun to me. So I kept thinking about that while I was reading it, and how like Invisibles is a lot more fun, and I thought he did a better job of explaining his worldview, and like it gelled better with the story. And I think that's part of their feud, and that sometimes he's a better writer when it comes to stuff like that than Alan Moore. And sometimes he's not. It all depends. But like I think with respect to like getting his philosophy or cult knowledge or whatever in a fun way, I think Invisibles won that round. But that's just what I thought when I was reading it.
I'll just say that when these ABC comics were coming out, I felt like I was like in heaven, right? Because I had 4 books written by Alan Moore, all drawn by my favorite artists, including Chris Sprouse, and in this book, J.H. Williams. However, I think if you want to compare him to Grant Morrison, the key, I think, is that I feel like Grant Morrison writes from the heart and Alan Moore writes from his brain, right? So it's not as engaging, it's not as emotional. It's more of almost like showing off about the structure. Like the Mobius strip is the perfect microcosm of Alan Moore. It's so intricate and it's so well thought out and it's so perfect. But you don't walk away from that feeling much, right? It's more just a cool little exercise in like page design and mixing with a lesson on the occult. And I also, I didn't take it as philosophy at all. I just took it as Alan Moore kind of explaining to some extent whatever it's called, Jewish Kabbalah, as well as tarot cards, as well as a few other things, and just tying them together a little bit. But I don't walk away from it getting any philosophy. Like I don't walk away from it getting Alan Moore's philosophy. It's more just him just talking about the stuff. That's how I saw it.
I'm looking for more of an emotional experience when I read. Mm-hmm. If I want an intellectual experience, like Jolie says, I'll look for a textbook. But for like recreational reading, I'm looking for some kind of emotional experience.
Jolie, you were going to say something.
There was literally an ocean of emotion.
Darling, Jolie was going to say something.
No, I was really just going to be like, Mike Prime, get out of my brain. Like,
sorry.
No, it's true. Like, again, I love textbooks, but I also want to be entertained, and I wanted to read an emotional story. And this woman sets off on a journey. One, she first finds a replacement for her to be the Promethea while she's gone, so she can go on this journey to find her friend. And at the root of this book, there's like this really cool potential adventure, which turns into Alan Moore talking about all of the information in existence about the occult.
And to be fair, like there are other Alan Moore stories that provoke an emotional reaction. So I don't quite think like he's just an intellectual draftsman. I mean, there's other Alan Moore stories that have feels.
Oh, that's
provoke feels.
That's totally true. But like this is a book about ceremonial magic, which is not very feely. It's very much like cerebral and by the rules and numbers, and it's like
by its very definition. When you talk about ritual magic, the word ritual is right there.
Yep, exactly. And I feel like it's intentional that it's like, this is my philosophy, whatever you want to call it, my occult, religion, philosophy, worldview, and it's all connected. And I have to explain everything to you guys because I just want to tell you all about how cool creativity is and how it's a form of magic. And I think he just, like I said, it's very much Alan Moore's teaching the class, be a comic book.
But I mean, like Carlos mentioned the Pilgrim's Progress, and like that's exactly what that is, where it'll be like he'll have like a setup for an adventure. They'll explain everything about why you need to be a good person because of the Bible, and then they'll like resolve it. And this is basically like that, except for all these occult traditions and mysticism is incorporated. But yeah, it's like there's a setup. She's got to find her friend, and then they explain like all of this stuff about.
I do think there's like and to me, I guess I define philosophy as like guideposts on how you should live, and I do think you see that there. And my interpretation is Alan Moore is telling us y'all need to do a lot of drugs so you can access these higher planes of reality, which is where it's at, obviously, right? Because this is just a bastardized form of that ideal. It's very the cave. It's the cave allegory is what it is. In my reading.
Yeah, that's a very good connection that you made there between the
Plato's cave is what I'm talking
Plato's
about.
Cave, yeah.
That allegory, yeah.
Yeah, Plato's the cave, yeah. Mm-hmm. I totally get it once you said it.
Lee, is that a cat?
That is a cat, yes. She wants to be in on the whole thing. Oh. She said, how dare you take all the attention away this evening.
We would like her to be in on the book club. All cats get introduced. Pay the cat tax, please.
All cats are beautiful.
So this is my dad's cat. My dad passed away in April.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, and this is this was his cat. This is June, Miss June.
Oh,
Sean, do you want to? We're having a moment. Do you want to show the cats too, Sean?
Anybody else got cats they want to show?
No.
Thank you, Oliver. Oh, thank you,
Oliver
Eric.
is a cat.
This is
This is Buster from this past Tuesday, unfortunately.
Oh.
But you shared beautiful pictures of Buster, and I am thankful for that life well lived.
21 years.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Maybe 22. It's a rough estimate of when I actually got him.
We'll take 22.
I left Hannah outside before I went to work, so she's mad at me right now.
Oh.
But this is a photo of her.
Oh.
There. Ta-da, sleeping on the couch.
Is she gray?
She's black.
She's black and white. Black and white. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Wait, okay, sorry. Back to the book.
After we had a Paul interlude.
Eric had something he wanted to say.
Did I?
I think you did. Something about not liking the book, and this is why.
I don't know. I guess. I mean,
just express yourself, Eric.
Saying, like what we thought about it, or whatever, like what you expected, and this, that, and the other, and then went off into 15 tangents. So, like, I don't know. I would think if the whole premise of this whole thing was to go on this adventure with her old friend, it's like nothing adventurous ever actually happened. Like, oh no, we're drowning. Oh, believe in yourself, and then you can breathe underwater. It's like, come on, nothing exciting ever happened. It was all just like they were traumatic, and then all of a sudden they were just okay.
Yeah,
and they're in a new colored world, and so each color didn't. I mean, it was just boring. There wasn't any actual adventure in their adventure.
There were certain things that happened.
Self-discovery.
Yeah.
That's not adventure.
Yes, it is.
I love Eric's like, self-discovery, whatever.
Could have had an assault rifle.
Why do you want to discover yourself? I mean,
I'd rather discover you.
Yeah.
I mean, and then this whole
I have to totally disagree with
trying
that.
to find her husband, if they were all in the same place in the first place, if he wanted to be found, they would have been together already.
Ooh.
No.
I guess I mean,
No.
Yes, fight, please.
Like, didn't he have to walk past her to get to where he's going? I mean,
he died years before she did.
I don't know that. I didn't read 1 through 12.
I mean,
I was told I didn't
better.
have to understand 13.
I wanted you to look at the pages. I figured this would be a different kind of experience.
I will agree that, like, so a lot of times the answers and solutions are just like really too packed and simple. It's like, yeah,
like they're going through drama for 5 pages, and then all of a sudden it's just over.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, there's a whole new world, different.
Well, how would you want to see it concluded?
Well, you're like hoping for like this.
It was like a build up
and laser blast. I mean, how do you? I mean, this, you know.
Well, I think
climax was underwhelming.
I'll give one example. I can't remember if it's maybe you can help, Chad. Is it a Labyrinth or one of those movies? Because you're a fan of Labyrinth, right? Or Dark Crystal, aren't you?
Yes,
he's Dark Crystal.
One of those movies where she has to answer a riddle at the gateway.
Yeah, Labyrinth, and you got the guys at the doors,
right? And that's
you
a
have
classic
to ask the other guy which door he thinks is is the right door. That way, you know the other guy is telling the truth.
And you've seen that in other movies. I mean, Grant Morrison's done it. You've seen it in Alice in Wonderland has a little bit of that. It would have been nice to see when they face these challenges to get out of them with their wits. That would have been ideal, I think, right?
Well, I think, okay, so everybody's talking about these individual issues being... What? Oh, okay. All right. Everybody's talking about these individual issues being about self-discovering something. The issue that I thought was actually the most informative and most helpful to me was the red anger issue, because, you know, they confront a demon and it's a monster until she decides to greet it pleasantly and as a friend, and the entity that she is scared of immediately changes to something that isn't so frightening.
Great point.
And self-discovery. That was the whole purpose of that. When you're talking about a journey and adventure of self-discovery, that's part of it. The things that you are the most afraid of, when you confront them, turns not to be that fearful after all. It's the fear of avoiding them that makes them dangerous. So I'm just
well, right, but like it's not Promethea having that moment.
Right.
Because it's hard to sort of sketch her out. Like it's hard to look at her as a character.
Well, that was Sophie.
It was Promethea. She did it.
Sophie and Barb were both.
And also,
they said they had righteous anger.
I also want to say that was one of my favorite parts, because not only did that happen, but then just when you think they've too easily overcome the obstacle, then remember when the guardian angel comes in and is like, whoa, don't be so forgiving. This guy is basically says he's a child molester, right?
Well, he's a demon, so
he's a demon. And then the next page, that same guardian angel's like, oh, you know what? I would have banged him. Isn't he attractive? So it's just like, it's this insane, you know? That's one of my favorite issues. I love that whole sequence. It was great. Just making you second guess everything. I thought it was great. I loved it.
But it's hard to sort of look at Sophie or Promethea as a character in her own right, outside of like an Alan Moore delivery vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to get invested in her stakes or whatever it is even that she's doing for me.
Only if you don't look at it as a voyage of self-discovery with these different layers attached to it. I don't think it's a straightforward superhero. We're going to go in, we're going to save the damsel, and we're going to get out.
And I don't think it's a superhero story. I never approached it as such.
Okay.
It's a science hero story. Anyway, okay.
Which is weird because she's all about mysticism, but they keep calling her that.
All the ABC characters are science heroes. That's just
okay.
Yeah, that's just. I think that's Alan Moore's way of distinguishing them from superheroes.
Oh,
okay. Because the philosophy is that theoretical physics is indistinguishable from, like, it's a place where faith and physics meet, right? Theoretical physics, you know, where your perception forms reality. You know, it's the whole Schroeder's was the cat in the box thing, where it's both alive and dead until you look at it.
So Lee, what you're saying is I can take this class for both philosophy and physics credit.
Correct.
All right.
Double major.
Excellent.
That's very
So do we want to talk about the B plot with rave goth Promethea?
Oh yeah, that was my story question
16.
Yeah, story question 2. Stacia's adventure with Grace's Promethea was a necessary B-plot to provide some sex and violence to an otherwise entirely walking and talking narrative. Do we wish we saw more of their adventures?
Yes.
I thought that was
yes.
plot. That
My
was
favorite part was when she banged her own head into the table. That was my favorite part.
Issue 1, Eric, so I don't know how much you actually read.
Ooh.
I thought that was issue 2.
What?
Yeah, it was 2.
I think
it was issue 2.
Yeah, I know everything.
Damn it, I had something funny to say.
Yeah, too late.
I thought it was cool. It definitely felt a lot more straightforwardly kind of super heroic. I don't know if the other books are like that or not, if they're also more weird and abstract.
I felt like the first 2 volumes had a bit more of that element of it. Because like there's sort of an origin story where she has to like do more fisticuffs and like be in that lower.
So like
realm.
issues 1 through 8 are very straightforward. And then she has sex with a wizard, and then she talks about tarot cards, and then she goes into the afterworld, and then
no, but hang on.
She's selling you healing crystals on Etsy.
Yeah, that's issue 27.
But she did do a lot of reading because the magicians gave her books, and now she did the reading, and now she's delivering her dissertation in this volume.
Yeah. That's kind of what these issues are. Is that she did all her work, and now she's doing it.
Right.
And I'm her like the Solomon issue in volume 4. I don't know if any of you are going to keep going, but I really, really like that issue. It kind of resolves the Stacia and Grace plot. And kind of sets it up for the final ending, which is very dramatic because she ends the world.
And to be fair, she did warn us. So
yeah,
right. Yes. Also, I got to point out, if you're going to skip issues, you could skip all of them, but I recommend number 12 for those.
Just the way you phrase that. You could skip all of them.
Oh, well, I mean, the first. If you want to skip the first 2 volumes, I mean, I didn't obviously, but. If you start at number 12, that's the issue where it's all lessons about specifically magic. And that's sort of the beginning of this sequence. So it's unfortunate the trade starts at number 13 because number 12 would have been a better starting point.
But wasn't number 12 the like sex with the wizard one?
No, that was before.
No, number 12 was, remember the 2 snakes, Mick and Mike?
Okay.
That was number 12. I love that one.
Okay. Because I was like, if we're starting with that one, that's kind of off-putting. But never mind.
Even the sex one was great, but anyway.
It'd be a rough start, though.
Yeah.
Expecting superheroes.
I mean,
and I couldn't quite tell which one was the self-insert for the author in that issue. But anyway.
Why not both?
You are probably correct, sir.
Sometimes you gotta do some sex magic if you want to.
I feel like we sort of agree that the Mars issue works the best, like the one that's completely red. Why do people think that and I'll just say for me, it's because it's the first time that even like the philosophy feels applicable. Like it feels like there's, I don't know, like a point to the self-discovery. Like the self-discovery before is just sort of like, this is what I think about science and this is what I think about language. But this feels like two to three people like actually like struggling with like how you deal with like your own like the negative parts of yourself.
Feels more personal.
Yeah.
So it's detached, less just purely cerebral.
Well, it's also the first time that both Prometheas actually meet in the narrative. You've got the one that's on Earth, and then you've got the one, and then Barb and Sophie that are out in Wonderland, right? The red issue is the one where they actually do kind of like cross, even though they're just like poking it, like saying hi through a window. But they both deal with like anger and frustration in different ways. Like Stacia eats all the other demons because she accepts the fact that demons are not something outside of herself, but things that she's also done, which kind of takes the heat out of a lot of things. Yeah, anyway.
I guess so what would have made it work for me maybe marginally better is, well, I guess there are stakes in it. They're trying to find her husband. Maybe I just needed different stakes. I don't know. Because I suppose that's a goal, I guess, in the narrative.
But is it a higher goal?
What do you mean by higher?
Like to do something, like to go to find your husband, somebody that you deeply care about enough that you married them, versus just letting them wander and be lost and like write them off and get remarried, right?
I mean, I guess that's high enough for me, if you want to think of it that way.
I think they could have maybe done a little bit more to sort of like interconnect the two plot lines, like maybe raise the stakes that way. Like, oh, this demon is going to destroy the world, but not if the two Prometheas do something in the spiritual realm.
You want the two Prometheas to have to overcome something in order to work together? Yeah, okay. I can see that.
I feel like this one did have stakes, which was, I feel like, part of it. Like the stakes were like confronting and dealing with like the own negative things inside of you. Like, I don't know, like somebody who has also died, like discovering, like finding their dead husband in the underworld, like that does feel like pretty low stakes.
But even then, like I don't think there was ever any risk or danger to them. Like there's some pretty intense scenes, like particularly in the red issue, but it never felt to me like there was any danger or risk to like something wrong happening. Like Sophie already had the answer. Well, she would need to have the answers. Like there was always a way out. Like for me,
the answer's been inside you all along.
Yeah, like there was never really a sense of danger or risk.
And Barb is already dead, so she's gonna die again. I mean, then she'd start at the beginning.
Yeah, that's the problem. Like you have to keep going, and that means hitting each gate. And I don't know. I'm gonna let you guys keep talking. I remember this book. I remember what it taught me. But like, it's everything everybody's saying is real. It's true. It's whatever.
I do feel like it has stakes. I don't like that's I feel like that's a big part of like mental health and growing up. Like you do not confront that. Like you are like you're doomed to repeat like those things because you're acting like they're outside of you. Like that was like one time where the philosophy itself almost felt like it gave it stakes.
Yeah. Well, here's something for you. The only thing you have in common with every failed relationship you've had is you.
Well, thank you, Lee.
Thank you so much. That's real. Like I agree with like, and that sort of like brings it to the forefront. Like, it is related. Like,
but I guess like
the
Sophie
demons are created by you of suppressing those emotions and not confronting your own work that has to be done on you, and you create the demons externally by doing that. That's the way I interpret it.
But here Sophie is both. I mean, if she has stuff to work through, sure, but she's both like that person and also the person like giving herself the counseling. So
is
she really
like what being a wizard is like?
Yeah,
but are you really helping yourself if you're just talking to yourself?
Yes.
Isn't that what self-help is?
Oh, well, yeah, but okay. I mean, okay, sure.
Is anybody familiar with Buddhist afterlife, with that whole philosophy where you have to go through and you have to deny sex, you have to deny gluttony, you have to deny greed with wealth. Like you have to, in order to get to where you need to be, you have to, all the things that you are coveting in the physical world, there's these traps set for you to like stay there and be trapped by greed, gold, comfort, wealth. And then there's another trap where it's all sex and pleasures of the flesh. And then you have to ignore those and keep going in order to reach this higher plane, right? And to me, that journey for her to find her husband was kind of like that. Like you have to ignore all these other side things in order to stay focused on where you need to go. I mean, that's what I took from it.
I'm going to give one more quote I read that I think sums up my feelings about this book. Someone said, "It is at once the most overrated and underrated series in comics." And I agree with that, because I agree with every positive point that Lee is making and that whoever else is making, that I'm making. But I also cannot dispute the negative points about it, because if you're judging it strictly as a story, it's not a story. But as long as you accept it's not a story, there's plenty to enjoy. So that's my final take.
Absolutely.
It's good take.
I'm trying to think of where it would fit in. It's not a story, but it's a fable or a tale or like a fairy tale or.
Yeah.
Well, it's like,
but
I agree, it's like a
fable
lesson.
too?
I mean, I would call it a story. I wouldn't necessarily call it like maybe, I don't know, a novel or.
I think of it as a work of art, actually. As I progressed through it and started recognizing it for what it was. And I actually looked at the last series. I just like skimmed all the way to issue, I think like 32 when it ends. And it completely evolves into this huge work of art. And I read a story where the way they constructed the very last issue, if you received a paper copy of that, you could take the staples out and assemble it into a giant poster, which is another separate work of art.
Yeah, I did that.
So
I bought
you did that,
so I could do that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
So to me, it was very ambitious. It was an ambitious work of art that I was frustrated with, but it was a work of art nonetheless.
And they really swung for the fences on this one.
They did. Crazy.
I mean, I will say, like, there's a pre-Raphael, I don't know how to pronounce it. There's an artwork tradition pre-Raphael.
Raphael.
But the artist is Raphael, but the art movement is called pre-Raphael. It's where it's like there's so much hagiography in all of the artwork where it's like it's a whole nother story is going on in just the artwork, and it's like I don't know how much that works in this, like without like having a decoder as you're going through it to understand what all this imagery is supposed to be telling you.
It's telling you to drink your Ovaltine.
I want you to do more drugs.
Yeah, I thought it supplemented the story well, though. Just like with I know it wasn't like with the issues I read, there was like sigils and symbols that I thought were complementing the story.
Yeah,
very well.
There's like going to. This was in one of the first issues, but there's like a Angel Mon's story. And she's like narrating, but she's not talking about World War, or like she mentions World War One.
Oh, yeah.
But she doesn't talk about what she does. But like all of the illustrations are like like very abstract, but it's also talking about like life on the battlefield. But it's all right. So Raphael like would draw images like, and it would just be like a static image. Pre-Raphael refers to like. Before him, like it would be like if you've seen old religious illustrations, and there'll be like, this person is sitting and that means this.
Oh yeah.
This person's holding these flowers and this means this. And so these
symbolism.
What?
It's symbolism.
Yeah. It was like and so like a lot of that disappeared after Raphael. And so pre-Raphaelites are trying to bring back all of this symbolism and hagiography. It's like I don't know what half of this.
Oh, there's so much shit. Like the way their hands are positioned, even like it's a whole big rabbit hole to go down. In and of itself.
And I feel like some of that's being incorporated into this story.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't.
It's too. Yeah. Because it's like Jolie was saying, he took everything. It's so done.
Unless you have done ayahuasca, it's really hard to understand the layers that have to be peeled. You have to read it while on ayahuasca. That's all I'm saying.
What's something funny too is that suddenly I
Acid
feel
just is not going to cut it. You have to go to the next level.
Oh, okay.
Got to go on DMT. You got to talk to the machine elves, and they'll help you decode it.
And then the blue lady will guide you to the end.
Perfect.
You see, I think it really depends on where your expertise is as well when you're reading this. So like Lucy and Keith were saying, there's a lot of, and this is where my art history degree, thank you, Jesus, comes into play, because it's like, because I'm familiar with all that stuff, that didn't, like, I saw it already, and I didn't feel like that was overdoing it. And it's like, I'm a little familiar with the occult, paganism, and like tarot cards. So I felt the parts that I was familiar with, he over-explained them to the point where there was like just a lot. And he could have been subtle. And maybe this is just a testament to J.H. Williams III. Is that like those references, there was enough references there. There's like, again, the allegory and the symbolism, that it wasn't all of the allegory and the symbolism from the pre-Raphaelites, or like, I think wherever.
It's layered, right?
Yeah. It's also measured.
Yeah.
With Alan Moore in this book, though, it's like he had like a heaping cup of occult, and he didn't like level off that heaping cup.
He ruined the cookie recipe.
Chad, you looked like you had something to say.
I was going to ask about art history, right? So the covers for each issue, you may or may not have gotten them, because I don't know if they're included in the digital collections. But each issue is well, the entire book is famous for having influences for each issue.
Mm-hmm.
But each, do you feel that the design and influences from the covers relate to the content that follows? specifically Peter Max. I think that was referenced with the emotional issue. I didn't know enough about his artwork, but I think he drew the Yellow Submarine cover art.
It was pop art at the time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, a lot of the artwork that is referenced is from the 20th century. So, did any
early 1960s,
or did any stand out?
I don't know enough.
Just the one part where there's actually a wood carving of an etching of a man where he says, "Don't worry, I'm just an allegory of a wood carving of an etched man, and I've been here for hundreds of years." That's the part that resonated with me and made me laugh.
That was great.
Because that's the kind of thing that I was expecting from from Alan Moore as a writer, but then, then
it goes off the deep end.
Sometimes a pipe is just a pipe.
Perhaps.
Well, here's the thing. We should probably wrap it up only because it's 8:37. Does that sound good or no?
Yeah, wrap it up.
Yeah, wrap it up.
We're on a Mobius strip, anyway. Okay, who's gonna wrap it up first?
Mike.
Mike, who, me?
Yeah. No, the other Mike.
Okay.
Mike Prime. Yeah. Okay. I'll still stick with the 5, but I'll bump it up on the story side. The writing maybe a 3 and maybe a 7 on the. The art's still spectacular, but still a 5. I don't know. Very ambitious, and I'll select Jolie.
Thank you. I will continue with my 8 for the art. It's an 8. I like being able to see his art in this book and to know now just how spectacular it's gotten, because I'm still a fan. This person is a genius. Okay. I initially gave the book the same score as someone else. I think that was
an 8.
I had an 8 also.
Oh, okay. Well, it's definitely not Lee. I think whoever scored it 4, I was with them. Chad?
It was
Carlos.
me and Chad. Me and Chad had the same scores, and we opened it up.
Okay, great. So yes, if we're looking for adventure, romance, a narrative, I give it a 4. But I can't after this discussion with sound mind give it a 4. I think I'm going to bump this up to like a 6 because there's a lot there, and I will caution anybody, including myself, to just spoil it for yourself and know what you're getting into before you read anything. Because had I gone into this expecting like a slog, then it would have been probably like an 8 or a 9, but I didn't, and I expected something totally different. And let's settle on a 6 because there's plenty of reading to do. I'm going to pick Airwick.
I don't remember my numbers, but I'll keep them the same. I think it was a 3 and a 7.
A negative 3.
No, it was
and a 0.4
because it's like an average. Because some of the artwork is like a 9 or a 10, and then some was like children.
You never talk about what you like.
I don't. It's been a couple weeks since I read it, so it was the full page ones were the best. There's the one, I don't know, there's like a big woman.
Yeah. He liked the like splash pages.
The big splash pages, or I guess that's what they call them. With everything like blended together and all that fun stuff. But yeah, the story is just too boring. Sorry.
Eric, pick someone.
Patrick.
I think I'll stick with a 6 as well. And maybe if I was more of a fan of this platonic ideal garbage, I'd like it more, but I guess I'm more of a Marxist materialist, so let's stick to a 6. Carlos, please proceed.
As somebody who is also a Marxist materialist.
Oh, hey, brother.
discovering some things about each other. But yeah, no, I will give it, I'm going to stick with it. I knew it would be a slog, and it still was a slog. Like, knowing that it was a slog did not make it any less sloggy. I think there are ones that resonate. I think it actually works sort of similar to, once again, to bring it back to the Phantom Tollbooth, when it's actually like sort of universally relatable, when like Alan Moore's philosophy like has bearing on people's like day-to-day lived lives. I think it actually works. Like, I think that's why the Mars, the red issue really works. But other than that, like, I don't know. I don't care that much about the Kabbalah, and I guess I could take a passing interest, but this is more of a passing interest, I guess. So, yeah, but the artwork is wonderful, and the splash pages are like aesthetically interesting and add to what is being said. It was like, you know, I wish like there were TED Talks like that were just delivered through like spatial relationships.
I would so attend that TED Talk.
Yeah, 100%. I am going to pass it to Keith.
I didn't go before, but I'll give it a 7.5. It was like, you know, I think there's space for something like this, and I think that it succeeds at what it's trying to do. Like, it's not like Moore didn't know what he was doing when he did this, so it's very intentional and accomplished. I don't know how much, like, I don't think his intention was ever to have like the biggest audience for this. I feel like he knew what he was doing and it accomplished that. Sometimes I think thinks it's more clever than it is, and but I appreciate it, and I'm glad that we read it. Alan.
Yeah, so I'm going to stick with a 7. The story itself I found interesting. I didn't find it terribly emotionally resonant. I'm not really a spiritual person. I don't have any kind of connection to mysticism or anything like that. So a lot of that stuff was kind of like, listening to someone describe their homebrew world that they made for their D&D campaign. Like, yeah, buddy, that sounds really cool. Yeah, I think it's really cool that the Orc kingdom is right next to this other kingdom, and they have tense diplomatic relationships. I think that'd be a fun campaign to be in, bud. That was kind of my feeling about it. But I think what really was cool for me was just the visual splendor of everything, just how visually engaging it was. So I enjoyed reading it. I certainly don't regret the time that I spent with it. Lucy, what were your thoughts?
I didn't finish it. I don't feel like it would be. I do want to.
Gosh dang it, Lucy.
Oh, you only read what? 12?
How far did you make it?
I made it right up to where I was supposed to start reading because I'm a rebel.
Oh, you.
Yeah.
But you gave it an initial score at least, so.
I want to continue, and I want to see why people got so mad about the rest. I don't know. I mean, maybe I was ready for Alan Moore's Occult 101 Wizard School. So I don't know. I'm going to keep reading it. I'm going to give it an 8. 8 and 9. 8 story, 9 art. Mm-hmm. Who's left?
I agree with that.
I think Chad is left and Sean is left. And
Lee?
Mike and Lee.
Oh, all kinds of people. Let's see what Sean has to say.
Oh, Sean.
Yeah, I'm just going to keep the score the same. I stopped reading at the Sun page and just looked at the art, and I enjoyed that a lot more. And I feel like I didn't miss anything.
Nope.
Nah.
I really love the green Promethea punk rock story. Yeah.
Pick a person, yo.
Eric?
He's gone.
Or Chad?
Yeah, I'll go. I will give it a 9 on artwork because I forgot to mention that his wife did all the research. Huh. So much on the page that he needed somebody else to do the research, and it was a team effort. And if you look at the page where they're in the subway terminal, you'll see a picture of Alan Moore actually meeting the both of them, which I thought was really sweet. The story, I'm also going to bump up to a 6. What?
Where's the subway?
Oh, it's the imagination issue, Moon River. Here. There's Alan and J.H. Williams and his wife.
Huh. I did notice that was him in the crowd.
Yeah. So the art's great. The story's I like the story 20 years ago. I don't like the story right now, but I do know Kabbalah because of this book, and I feel great about it. So I'm going to give it a 6.
Like it.
Who do you want to go next?
Of course, Mike L.
I'll still give it an 8. I'm going to finish reading it again for the 3rd time. And I also want to give Alan Moore an 8 for the art because J.H. Williams didn't draw anything that Alan Moore didn't tell him to. So he deserves some credit too. Yeah! High five. All right. We done?
Lee?
Lee?
Oh, Lee. The final word goes to Lee.
No, you don't have to get my comments. That's okay. Nothing I can say is important.
Lee, you've been gone so long.
Shots fired.
So
Do it again, Lee.
Okay, I just want you guys to know that I was set up to talk about the Fantastic Four, and that week was when my dad got diagnosed, and that's why I had to leave. So that's why I didn't show up to the cafe that week. And this whole time through quarantine, I was quarantined with him until he passed away in April. So that's why I haven't been involved as much as I could have been because I was taking care of, the family farm out here and taking care of my dad. So it wasn't, I missed you guys terribly, but then the pandemic happened literally right after that, like a couple of months later. So that's why I've been disconnected from society in general. But then I realized that everybody has. So there's that. Yeah.
Well, I've been enjoying your farm pictures. I heard you talk about it. So it's like, I'm really happy to see you. I miss you. Yeah. And post more pictures of farm animals.
Okay, I will. I don't know because I don't know how people take them because I don't really read any of the comments that much. So I just put up stuff that I think that people will enjoy and try to brighten people's day. That's why I would just put enjoy and then I just throw the pictures up, right? But I'd be more than happy to do that. Yeah, not a problem because I walk the perimeter every day to make sure the fence isn't tore down. So yes, I can do that for you. But for me, on this, I will keep that at 8 for the artwork. Yes, the story. I mean, I think as a lot of people pointed out as a introduction to Mysticism 101, I think this is a good primer, but it's so layered. It has so many levels to it based on how you approach it and your own personal belief system and your knowledge base too, right? On the subject matter. If you're into tarot, there's a lot of stuff in there for that. If you're into Kabbalah, there's a bunch of stuff in there for that. If you're into paganism, there's some stuff in it for that. If you're into cat magic, there's some stuff in it for that.
Cat penises.
If you're into that, I mean, so I think that J.H. Williams and him just really did a deep dive into this. And to your point, they just, it's just regurgitated everything onto the page. I don't think anything was left to wonder about or to from their point of view. I think that maybe it was over researched, if anything else. I mean, there isn't any mystery about what they're trying to do and what's going on. So as a 101, as an introduction for people who are uninitiated to these ideas and concepts, people who haven't done acid or mushrooms or ayahuasca, people who haven't delved into those higher planes of consciousness, I think this is as close as you can get without having that type of experience. And coming at it from somebody who is into theoretical physics, the ideas that they touch on are, they're the Schrodinger's cat analogy is in there, is that you are creating your own existence. Therefore, your work on yourself is even more important because you affect the reality that's around you. Right, you create those demons, or you create the paradise. And that's something I think that everybody can relate to. So I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10, and I thoroughly enjoyed it for what it was. I didn't go into with any preconceived notions or expectations. Therefore, I was not disappointed, but I was amazed at the layering that was put in there. And I it's just like when I walk into the DIA, I agree with Mike Prime that this is a work of art and should be appreciated as such, where you don't even have to read the story to appreciate the layers and the complexity and the symbolism that is laid out in that in across those issues. So I'm going to leave it with that.
Nice. Lee, are you going to help us set up a Nerdy Book Club group acid trip?
Sure.
Consciousness.
Yeah. So understand that the entry level would be you would have to have had sex. So
I'm already out, Lee.
I'm getting triggered.
So that experience of orgasm is your first mind altering experience, right?
Got it. Okay.
Right. And then we can elevate up to the next levels from there.
Well, that doesn't require sex.
Skulls are not allowed into the higher plane of
Hi, Patrick. All right. I'm going to stop recording, okay? This is off the rails.